Joining us now is Matthew Hurtt. He's the chairman of the Arlington Republican Party with a lot of questions about this. Matthew, good to have you with us today.
Vince, it's great to be with you, and I just want to thank you for making sense of the news and covering these very important local issues.
It's super important, and it's horrifying to hear that a well-known sex offender is being granted access to high school girls' bathrooms. How does something like that happen?
So we outlined the entire timeline on arlingtongop.org this morning. Basically, the way I became aware of this was in September of last year. My girlfriend's swim group, they go and swim at W&L, Washington and Liberty. They mentioned that there was a man hanging out in the girls' locker room. He was exposing himself. None of the women I've spoken to have ever seen him actually utilize the pool. So this happened at the end of September, and it wasn't until mid-October that Arlington County Police arrested him. And what I learned from the women who have spoken with me before and who have come in and spoken with me this week since the story has gone viral was that when they alerted the county employee, a woman by the name of Helena Machado, who runs the APS pool operation, she said that he's permitted to be in there. And in fact, on at least 2 occasions, Ms. Machado said, and why don't you go use the family locker room, the single-use locker room, instead of concerning yourself with why this gentleman is in the girls' locker room?
This guy is a sex offender, and he's in the Virginia Department of Corrections Most Wanted. He is not allowed in a high school bathroom, is he?
Well, Vince, what is outrageous is Superintendent Duran issued a statement yesterday saying to sort of address the concerns of parents. He wasn't on school property during school hours. However, a woman who messaged me earlier this week said that she and her 9-year-old daughter walked in and witnessed this act. This gentleman, in the explanation, his face was covered, and you could see everything from the chest down. It is very clear that he's a Tier 3 sex offender. 30 years. This goes all the way back to 1992, when he said in court documents that he had a strong desire to expose himself to women and girls. He has half a dozen charges, half a dozen convictions in his history. There's about a dozen charges from September and October of last year. And not only did this happen at Washington Liberty High School, it happened at Wakefield High School, and it happened at Barcroft Sports and Fitness Center, of course, allegedly. That said, Vince, Arlington County is holding him without bond with the male population. So for your listeners, Arlington County, the most progressive and open-minded county in the country, either thinks that Richard Kenneth Cox is a man, or they're violating his civil rights by housing him with men.
Yes, he's the least credible woman you've ever seen, this guy. So a couple of other things about him. Arlington County, not the only place that's dealt with him and this madness. Apparently, he was also charged with indecent exposure for exposing himself in a Planet Fitness women's locker room in June of last year in Fairfax County. That charge was dismissed, and it was dismissed at the hands of Fairfax County Commonwealth's attorney Steve Descano. None of this should surprise anybody. That's a Soros-funded attorney in Fairfax County. And so each of these Northern Virginia counties with these lunatic prosecutors at the top in succession, they keep having to deal with this guy, and he keeps getting away with these awful acts.
So Steve Descano dropped the charges in early June of last year, and what I learned from another mother who reached out to me this week was that the county knew about Richard Kenneth Cox in Arlington facilities by mid-June. And another point that Superintendent Duran made in his message yesterday was that the county produced signage outside of the women's locker room at Washington Liberty. All of the women I've spoken with over the last several days since this story has really blown up have said they never saw a sign outside the locker room advising them not to go in. You're absolutely right. This has been going on. This string of alleged activity has been going on since June of last year in both Fairfax and Arlington. And in Arlington, where we also have a Soros-funded prosecutor, it is really going to be all eyes are on her to make sure on March 15th, when he goes to court again, that these charges stick and that they make their way through the court system.
So what are Arlington officials saying about this? What's the school board saying about any of this? The superintendent, are you hearing much from the elected officials in Arlington, or are they trying to play all this off?
Well, we're not hearing much yet, but the woman who witnessed this gentleman in the girls' locker room on September 9th took her complaint to the school board chair on September 23rd. I was provided with a written statement that she gave to Chair Mary Cadera, and she expressed these concerns. Chair Cadera, this is according to the mother, Chair Cadera said she would tell the other members of the school board. So it's reasonably safe to assume that all members of the Arlington School Board knew about this by the end of September last year, and it was another 3 or 4 weeks before he was arrested. Elected leaders are mum on this. This is a significant issue, and I think, Vince, quite frankly, this is why we need more moms and dads to run for school board in Arlington. What we have is an entire school board of professional left-wing activists who refuse to understand the plight. I've read the most heart-wrenching emails this week from mothers and fathers who have moved their children from one sport to another because of the threats. I've heard from moms and dads who have seen this man in girls' locker rooms, and moms and dads do not feel safe with their children going into some of these situations in our school system.
It's crazy to me. I mean, I realize Arlington is full of kind of brainwashed commies, unfortunately, but you would think sanity would prevail at some point. Like, you live in Arlington, so obviously there are some sane people in Arlington, but how does a full-grown man keep going naked into girls' rooms in front of little girls, and there hasn't been a single dad that's broke his face? How does that keep happening? You know what I mean? So, like, the basics here are that he keeps getting away with it, and everyone's hemming and hawing and twisting their fingers and, like, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Like, there's no excuse for why that guy is in the locker room.
The unifying theme of almost every person who has come to me, mom or dad or concerned woman, has said they didn't want to be ostracized by members of their social circle because of the transgender issue. And here's the thing. In court filings in Fairfax last year, this was covered by Nick Minock at WJLA, basically Cox said, I'm utilizing the political climate to identify as transgender so that I can access spaces that I've wanted to access for the last 30 years. And so it's absolutely outrageous. He not said this a partisan in court filings? Issue. So there are court filings. It's in the WJLA coverage. Essentially, he argues that the current climate allows him to identify this way. And if you pair that with his 1992 letter to a judge where he expresses a sincere desire to expose himself, it is absolutely ridiculous. And this is not a partisan issue. I've received a number of communications from people who have said, I'm a Democrat, I'm a progressive, I'm a liberal, and I don't want to be part of the messaging campaign on this, but I want you to know my plight or my concern. And we're hearing from people across the political spectrum. This is not a political issue. This is about the safety of children in the school system.
The Arlington Public Schools superintendent, Dr. Francisco Duran, sent out a letter yesterday afternoon to Arlington Public Schools families and pool users, and in it said that he wanted to address the presence of a registered sex offender at the Arlington Aquatic Center pools, saying, we take the safety and trust of our community very seriously. The incidents did not occur during school hours. This is what you were just telling me, Matthew Hurtt. And while part of the same facility, school and pool entrances and exits are separate, he said. So basically, like, what's the big deal? APS personnel, immediately upon discovery that he was a registered sex offender, they banned him and prohibited him from using any of the aquatic centers, notified law enforcement, and the individual has since been taken into custody. But here's the final paragraph of this very stupid letter. Our commitment to the safety of our students remains steadfast, and we will not tolerate any behavior that compromises the well-being of our community. Arlington Public Schools will continue to foster an inclusive community for all, including those who identify as members of the LGBTQ plus community. So in other words, this Dr. Francisco Duran, hasn't learned anything from this. Instead, thinks that he needs to do some throat clearing about how we need to stand up for the LGBTQ community when you have a dude who's making a mockery right now of Arlington.
This is absolutely the case, and even in the statement that the mother provided to Chair Mary Cadera, she says the policy here is that he's actually sideways with the policy because of the way he was exposing himself in bathrooms. And look, I don't agree with it, but in bathrooms in Arlington, men who identify as women can go into women's bathrooms, and there is a basic function that you take care of in a bathroom. There is not a loitering. Again, I said at the beginning of this conversation, no one ever actually saw him access the pool. So he was literally just going into the school system, into the school buildings to hang out in the shower. And now I attended APS swim lessons a number of summers ago, and I'm familiar with what the male locker room looks like, and I can tell you there's an end shower that gives you an almost entire view of the locker area where people change clothes, and he allegedly just sat there or walked around or stood around and made these women uncomfortable. And in the Fairfax issue at Planet Fitness, there were women who have said they went next door to another business so that they could use the restroom because he made them so uncomfortable.
How many more invitations do we need to fix this? It's like the guy keeps doing it, and everyone's like, why'd that happen? Because you keep letting it happen. That's why. Matthew Hurtt in Arlington, again, one of the few sane people who live there. Thank you. Good to have you with us today, sir.
Thank you, Vince.
That's Matthew Hurtt, chairman of the Arlington Republican Party.